myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you.
Hi, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and it's a big welcome back to Liam Kennedy. How are you?
Great to be back on. Well, I miss me. I've got to say, I miss me Tuesday nights on NUFC Matters.
I think Tuesday nights may become the new Wednesdays. We've been having a bit of a catch-up off air before we came on. This is a pre-recorded show, but I think we're going to go with a Wednesday to get Liam back. It could be a variation of hours, depending on our work schedules, our respective work schedules. But Wednesday is probably going to be the day. That doesn't mean we're going to lose Geordie's here, Geordie's there. Just means sometimes it might replace it, other times it might be as well as. But Liam has been a vital part of NUFC Matters since it started, and great to have him back on a regular basis. And plenty to talk about, as always. Don't forget, this is a pre-recorded show. We won't see your questions in the chat, but we have pre-recorded this on Thursday, and we will be looking ahead to Spurs towards the end. But let's go back just to last weekend. And Liam, you've been home and away with Newcastle more or less all season, and that was probably the worst display we've seen this season against Aston Villa.
Yeah, I think it's a performance that for me has to be analysed through the frame of looking at the last 12 months. It really is an outlier when it comes to levels of performance. We haven't seen a team this season in particular take Newcastle United apart like Aston Villa did. Aston Villa, for their part in the proceedings, were very, very good. Unai Emery set up his team perfectly. They play the way they normally play, caused all kinds of problems, particularly for the back four and midfield, who looked shadows of their usual selves. So I think credit has to go to Aston Villa for that. But I think one thing that I'm hoping, which we'll find out against Tottenham and probably Everton and everybody else moving forward, is that this was an outlier performance and isn't a sign of anything to come. I don't believe it is. I think they just played a very good Aston Villa and had an off day. It's taken them 30 games this season to have an off day. There's never been a season in my memory anyway that it's taken a Newcastle United team 30 games to have an off day. So I'm certainly not feeling too negative about it. I think there's I think the problem with social media, and there are many, one of the problems is it gives people an instant platform to react. And often, you'll know yourself as a fan, I'm a fan as well as a writer, often your first reactions in situations aren't your best. They're loaded with emotion, loaded with, they're just loaded in general. And I think social media reflects that. It gives people a platform to instantly give their reactions, which can be good in some ways, but often when it comes to negative things that happen, can be very, very bad. So I never, ever, in my opinion, ever judge the feeling of the masses and the supporter base on what I see on social media, because quite frankly, some of the reactions are mental, totally mental. And I think most normal thinking Newcastle United fans, even the ones who felt that emotion and didn't put it out there initially, will after a few minutes, hours, days, reflect on it and think pretty much the same as what I am. That look, these lads have been excellent for Newcastle United this season. They deserve criticism for the performance that they put in, but also deserve enough credit to say, look, we give them a good opportunity to come back from this in the next few games. They might not beat Tottenham. They might struggle again against Tottenham. But that's not to say they won't come again. This team's already had their second win this season, and they might need a third one. They might need to come back again and push on. But I think the bigger picture tells you the whole story. And the bigger picture is that I think if Newcastle United win the next four out of their last 8 games, they will finish in the Champions League. And that famous tune, The Champions, will be played out at St James's Park for the first time in 2 decades next season. What an achievement that would be. From a manager who, even by the owner's admission, was the second choice, who got done off the man who was the first choice last weekend at Villa. Who predicted Eddie Howe would be able to produce not only a team that managed to stay in the division last season, but climb themselves up the lower mid-table and then push on into the Champions League the following season. Despite what critics and the lazy analysts of the football world might say, has actually, when it comes to particularly nation-state owning football clubs, as many like to call Newcastle United, has been a pretty modest, like outsource, a modest spend. They haven't really spent anything when you think about it. There's been, a £60 million has been the outstanding deal, but there's been lots and lots of football clubs, many of them, a couple of them fighting relegation, who spent that kind of money on footballers in and around that. So it's not as if that's been an outstanding. Newcastle have never gone out and spent 200 million on a footballer, which probably would have been the equivalent when Man City were taking over, or PSG, the way they've gone about their business. It's a very different model, very different idea at Newcastle United, and I'm all for it. This feels like they're building a sustainable football club, and that's what we want. We want don't get us wrong, we want success of any kind, but isn't the idea that once you've had that success, isn't for it to suddenly disappear? Your standards change when you have that success, and it's about building something sustainable rather than a flash in the pan, which I think we're seeing. We're seeing the strange unpicking and unplaying of things like that going on at two football clubs in the Premier League at the moment. Tottenham, who Newcastle face on Sunday, in a very different case. Chelsea, in many ways, the sustained success of Chelsea looks very much in doubt, you would imagine, moving forward because of the change of ownership. And it'd be really interesting as a test case to see how that plays out in the next couple of seasons. I see some people, I heard some pundits the other day, I'll not name names, saying that they think Chelsea will guarantee because of the size of them bounce back. I'm not necessarily certain myself that they will. And Tottenham as well have tried to build a sustainable model with regards to stadium and other things, but it also proves that if you get the things on the pitch and you make bad decisions in terms of appointment, have a bad culture around a football club in terms of a losing culture, and have poor recruitment, which is what Tottenham have had for quite some time in many ways, you can struggle, and you can struggle massively. So it's about getting the balance of both things right. And that's what I feel like is happening at Newcastle United. We've got, I see a lot of people talking about Dan Ashworth. I see Dan Ashworth mentioned a lot by Newcastle United fans. And I think the one thing that really gets overlooked is people see Dan Ashworth as, why is he not signing the players he signed for Brighton? Why is that not happening now? That's not what Dan Ashworth's going to be doing, to be honest. Dan Ashworth has a multifaceted job. One of the key parts of his job is the youth side of things and putting the infrastructures in place that were there at Brighton. It's taken Brighton 5 years to get to the point of signing these type of players and building up that recruitment and scouting network across the globe that locates these players. And he does the bits and bobs around that at the end of it. He's a large part of the building of that structure. And that's what he's doing at Newcastle United now. He's building those structures that will hopefully bear some kind of fruit in the next 5 to 10 years. He's doing a lot of the current stuff as well, in and around, negotiations, making sure fair price is paid. He's got great contacts in football. There's a lot of that going on, but the bulk and the real value of his job will probably only come to fruition in, I would imagine, 5 to 10 years' time. When Newcastle have got an academy and they've got a structure and a coaching culture, and they're able to recruit players from within the area, who we lose so many of and have throughout the years lost so many of, and able to recruit good coaches and take them from the likes of the Academy of Light and Middlesbrough and other places where they lose these people to. They've lost to Manchester United quite a lot in recent years. Leeds pick up lots of players from this area who should otherwise be dropping into the Academy of Newcastle United. And not only picking those players up, but making sure they're guided and coached in the correct manner. Ashworth has got an overseeing eye on all of that. You speak to people who've had dealings with him at Newcastle United at the moment, and his knowledge, I'm told, is second to none. He's not the type of guy who's coming in not only talking about Eddie Howe's list, this player, that player, whatever, him from across the globe, talking about boys who are 14 years old coming through the academy at Newcastle United. And Dan Ashworth asked about this player. And he knows the ins and outs, his strengths, his weaknesses, things about his family. This is encyclopedic knowledge. And that's where the true value of an Ashworth appointment comes in for me. So I think people who... It's a symptom of football. Everybody is really short-sighted. If you don't have results like that, people get antsy about it. They're like, why is he not doing his job? Well, he is doing his job, and just give it time. I think one of the biggest messages that I've had since I've come on this show, Steve, has always been patience. And I think that's one thing when it comes to the likes of the Ashworth recruitment idea and the success that he had at Brighton and other places, and the England ID stuff at the FA. And it's about putting those structures and processes and getting things right from the very bottom to make sure that in years to come, things are right at the top. And we've seen that with the England ID. It's producing youth. England have got some of the best youth teams on the planet and producing some of the best young players on the planet. Consistently now, it's not just a flash in the pan with a golden generation. I mean, this has been put in place now where there is a structure, and it will continue producing for years to come as long as people stick to that model and keep developing it and improving it as football develops and improves. It's very much the same. Brighton, he's put a lot of those building blocks in place. A very incredibly run football club, a model for tens of football clubs in this country of a similar size who with the right investment and could do exactly the same. Interesting to see how that develops moving forward. If they keep to that structure, keep to those practices, and keep developing as football develops, because I think Brighton will probably find this season that they'll hit their ceiling. And what a ceiling that will be from a team fighting for their lives in the bottom division and others, and to suddenly potentially, I mean, if they have an incredible end to the season, have a chance of being in the Champions League. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that the job that was done there at Brighton, a large part of that, not all of it, far from all of it, but a large part of that was down to the Ashworth model and the way things were developed there under Dan Ashworth. A huge loss to them. So let's just not panic about that. He is doing an incredible job at Newcastle United already, as I'm told from people who have had dealings with him. A lot of eyes opened to the kind of level of professional that's coming to the football club, because let's remember Newcastle United, and this is no slight on anybody who's put their heart and their soul into this football club, respect them for that, but there's been a genuine lack of professionalism over the last 15 years or so. So to see these kind of people coming in, not just in ones and twos, but in levels and droves of recruitment in terms of structures throughout the club, whether that be recruitment, whether that be media side being boosted up, whether that be, every department has been significant analysis and things like that, incredibly improved scouting, all sorts. And long may it continue. I think I've even, Steve, I've done one of these things where I've gone 10 minutes there. I can't even remember what the original question was. What was I even talking about?
It's fantastic to have you back. I just really want to look at the other topic that I've brought up this week, and it's Anthony Gordon. That little spat, which was blown completely out of proportion, I think by a lot of people, has led me to ask the question on Monday, though, after the defeat, of course, that the dressing room is so positive. We've seen the team photographs. We saw one after that win, after the win last week with Anthony Gordon on the photo. But, with that little bit of petulance on the sideline, do you think the likes of Kieran Trippier, the more experienced faces in the squad, put their arms around him, Dan Burn, and just said, look, son, that's where you've got to learn. This club's different to where you've previously been. Or do you think, maybe they've been a little bit knocked? Do you think last week that he got straight back in? What do you feel? Because I used the analogy with Ross on Tuesday. Both him and I managed on Sundays, and we've had similar situations. And I had one of those situations that I could remember where somebody went off it with me, stormed off the pitch in a game. The following week, I went in the dressing room, had a chat with the lads, and I said, listen, you know, last week. We'll put it to one side. This kid's the best footballer we've got, and I'm starting him. I made sure I told it as it was. Ross said he had a couple of situations. Had that been another player, I probably wouldn't have played that kid in my managerial career. Do you think Eddie Howe made the right decision bringing Anthony Gordon straight back in last week? He put him straight into the team.
Before we get on to Gordon, I would be really interested to know what Ross said, because you'll like hearing this, but he's the best manager I've ever had. Not in a footballing sense, but in a professional sense. And he certainly had to deal with a few issues that we had.
He understood. Well, yeah, I think we both agreed 100% that we wouldn't have played. I wouldn't have played Anthony Gordon if he wasn't. It's a funny situation, right? But for me personally, if a player shows petulance towards you on the sidelines, does he start the next game? No. That is usually what happens. Let's look through the history of Newcastle United. Keegan and John Beresford. Keegan and Lee Clark. Two big profile players, a big profile manager, big profile games, and neither of those players started the next game. Dyer and Bowyer fighting on the pitch. Again, did they start the next game? I'm not 100% sure. It's probably a bad example for me. But did they start the next game? I'm not sure. But they shouldn't have. No, they brought the club into disrepute. But for me personally, Liam, it left me thinking, you know, he's got it right so far. Was that his first mistake last week? And again, the people who are watching will probably say, well, Steve, you know, you've asked this question, but that's what I tend to do on NUFC matters. I ask the question to everybody during the week, and we try to get a feel of how people are feeling. I'll flip it around. What would you have done? Would you have played Gordon?
It's an interesting question. So my view on I don't think there's any place for it in the way that he acted. I think it struck me as a player who didn't get so you can think of there's been two examples from my memory of players who've come on, have been taken off, and it sticks in my mind this, and it's all about attitude and application. Jacob Murphy was brought on as a substitute. I can't remember where it was, and he was brought off in the same game with the biggest smile you could see on his face. That was a boy who understood his value in this squad, understood where he stands, and understood the value in him coming off, what it meant within the game, within the team. That's what you call a team player. That's something very different. Anthony Gordon is younger, less experienced, different kind of person, showed petulance when the same thing was done. Now, I get it. It's born of frustration. He will believe in himself, and it'd be stupid if he didn't, and he shouldn't be here if he didn't. He believes he should be starting week in, week out. I don't think he's proven that. I think he's been given opportunities to prove that, and I don't think... Look, he's a young lad who I did like at Everton, and he's a lad who showed flashes, and mostly in the two games that pick up for me is what he came on and made a big impact on his debut. And then I thought he was very good with his hard work at Brentford when he came on in that second half, and was a big catalyst to the improvement in performance for the whole team. What I see, before I come on to what I would have started him, what I see in Anthony Gordon is a hard-working player with good technical ability. What I don't really see a place for him in this team as a starter. And the reason I say that is I still see a player who doesn't produce enough in the final third. I see a player who has very good pace, but doesn't know how to beat a man. Has good technique, but again, doesn't deliver enough into the box or with his passing range. So I see a player who needs a lot of coaching. Now, I'll put that down to Eddie Howe, who can probably coach him best. With all that in mind, I don't think he has any right to show that kind of petulance. I don't think he's earned that right. It happens, and it's a hard one. Would I start him? Would I not? I'm not necessarily sure I would punish him in that manner, but I suppose it's more about what the message that gives to the rest of the squad. that you can act like you want and continue. And I see why managers would probably not. It probably wouldn't have a bearing on me, being brutally honest, on whether he started the next game or not. I'd be more inclined to judge how he came in on the Monday or whatever day the next training day was. If he came in and looked as fresh as ever, as willing as ever, was given 110%, which is what you expect of everybody. If he was still at those levels and a bit more, then I would say I would be willing to forgive a bit of petulance, because it's more about the consistency for me. That's a flash moment where a young lad who needs a bit of coaching on and off the field. Clearly, I mean off the field, I don't know anything about the lad's life, but I'm saying off the field in terms of his mentality and the way he reacts to certain situations in games, which is purely based on what he did there at the end of that game. I think it would be more about the decision making for me would be more about what I see 99% of the time rather than that 1% of the time, because everybody can make bad decisions, and I don't think I would pick my team on 1%. I'd pick it on the 99% of what else I'd seen. And if he wasn't up to scratch and I wasn't impressed by him in the 4 days of training and in the gym and in his tactical analysis and the way he's going about his manner with the rest of the players, if I was upset with that, then he wouldn't be anywhere near my team. But I say I'd be more inclined, again, I'm not an expert, but I'd be more inclined to judge it on the 99% rather than that 1% flash moment.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Dan Burn, more or less an ever-present this season. And surprisingly, I think for most of us at left back, despite the fact that he played a vast amount of his career at Brighton at left back, I think most of us felt he was coming in as a centre half. But the performance of Fabian Schär and Botman together has been fantastic, alongside Kieran Trippier and of course Burn at left back. But targets fit. I think there's been a consensus of opinion among some supporters, including myself, that Burns looked a little bit tired, and I felt in the last 2 or 3 games certainly. It feels as if he's been targeted. That right-hand side has been targeted, and he seems to have had a little bit of a torrid time on, left back. And I mean, ultimately, it was always going to happen at some point. Do you think the time's come maybe to give Matt Targett, the nod against Spurs?
I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, and people might criticise for this, but ask Dom Sker, who works for the Gazette, and John Cronin, who works for Newcastle World, both great lads who I travel home and away with. And one of the things that I picked out in the summer was when we named any potential back four, and that was with Matt Targett or Dan Burn as the left back, is the distinct lack of pace and lack of pace in that back four. And I'm actually amazed that it's taken 30 Premier League games for that to actually be found out. That was the first game where Botman, he's got great judgment, reads the game really well. It's quite last ditch and makes blocks almost when he doesn't look like he's going to do it. But I always wonder, is that because he's given a bit too much freedom to the centre forward at times? I like him. I really like Botman. I think he's an incredible young player, but does lack a yard. And I think there's no getting away from that. That's not criticism of the player, but he isn't the fastest. Fabian Schär is what he is. He's never relied on pace. Kieran Trippier is getting on, isn't quick anymore. Is quick enough, but he's not, not what he was. And neither Matt Targett or Dan Burn have got pace. I think it's been a surprise to me how it's taken so long for that to be found out. With Dan Burn and Matt Targett, I think it's probably a little bit unfair to maybe round on Dan Burn from last week in particular, but the games previous to that, he was awful. He was awful at Brentford, given a right run around. Had a right struggle at West Ham too, from memory. I think Kieran Trippier has had some really tough times in this calendar year, being brutally honest. And like I say, Schär and Botman probably their worst games in a long time. That was arguably Botman's worst performance. But Botman's actually, in the last few weeks, showed signs of, he was a lot of people blame Karius for that second goal, the Rashford one, but you could argue that it was Botman potentially that was to blame, giving him a little bit too much room, and then it was because of that room, it was a deflection across over Karius. Then obviously there's the goal at Forest. We've had a few shaky moments in other games recently, and I just think it feels like I can see why Eddie Howe hasn't changed anything. I can really see it, because if you've got the best defence in the league, why would you change it? So I can see the mentality, and it's a good mix with good characters, and that's where Dan Burn comes in. That he's very much seen as a leader, like a real leader in that dressing room, a leader with his attitude and his application on the pitch, a really good character. And I can see why Eddie Howe doesn't want to take him out the team, because you lose a lot of positives. You lose a lot of defensive height as well. I do think for all his height and size, he's not the most aggressive of attacking players when it comes in the box. I think for his size, he should probably look to score more goals. I think he's only really Share's not the best attacking header of a ball. And neither's Botman by the looks of it. So for all their size and build, they're not really a goal threat. Jamal Lascelles arguably is the only central defender that we've got who can actually attack a ball in the opposition box. But I think he's a good leader, Dan Burn, and I can see why he wouldn't be taken out of the team. I would personally, I've been saying this for a little while, would have been drip feeding Matt Targett more minutes, and Howe hasn't done that. I think when Matt Targett came on the other day, he looks like a player who has not played much at all this season. And I would have huge question marks about throwing him in from the start in any game, having seen the little bit that I've seen. That's not a slight or criticism of the player.
Yeah.
But being brutally honest, he looks like a player who hasn't had many minutes. And let's be honest about this. He's had 0 minutes for a long time. Maybe he's had the odd 5 minutes at the end of a game in added time, plus that cameo the other day. That's not really anywhere near enough for a player to be coming in and starting football matches in the Premier League at the speed and pace that it's played at. I would have him in the team purely on his, I think at home in particular, he gives you an extra attacking threat, because a lot was made of the positive impact that Trippier had in terms of balls coming into the box last season. But I think the statistics show that Matt Targett was the person who delivered most crosses into the box for Newcastle at the back end of last season. And they've lost that altogether, because for all Dan Burn is a willing runner and he gives it a go and he'll bomb on if he can. Technically, he's not anywhere near what Matt Targett is. Matt Targett's got a really good left foot. And I think players like Isak and Wilson would thrive off some of the deliveries that he puts in, and Wilson in particular. So yes, I would, if you're purely judging two players on and bringing Targett in terms of his strengths against Burns, I would probably bring Targett in personally. But I would caveat that with, I think, like I say, I wasn't. He came on at Villa and did all right, but he did look like a player who hadn't played a lot of minutes. And to suddenly throw him and expect 90 on Sunday would be a big risk. But Eddie Howe's the one who judges that. He's the one who sees them. He's the one who's got the players to this position. And I think we will see more of Matt Targett before the end of the season, because, like I say, for me, he gives a totally different attacking threat, and it becomes less predictable down that left-hand side in many ways when you have a Matt Targett, because it's then a three-pronged attack if you play Joe Linton and Willock switching. And then you've got Targett who can actually go on the outside and deliver balls in. So I think it gives good balance, but you do lose a lot of that leadership, like I say, defensive size, and character. And that's no slight on the character of Matt Targett, but I know from what I hear that Dan Burn is really one of the big leaders in that dressing room. And I think he's played a lot of his Premier League football. I'd love to see the stats on this, Brighton and Newcastle, but a lot of his Premier League footballs we played at left back. I still see him as a centre half, and that's not just looking at his physical stature. I see the back end of last season, you think he was excellent at centre half. He really was excellent. And I think for me, it's got to be a case of next season moving forward. And we know the kind of areas, I'm sure we'll come on to this in a bit, the kind of areas that Newcastle want to strengthen in the summer. I would see Dan Burn probably becoming the next choice centre half is in a backup centre half who can also play a bit of left back in the squad makeup next season, I wouldn't envisage you be a starting left back beyond the end of this season.
Okay, halfway through the show, as always, we'll go to the ads.
A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks also to Mr. Vicky's, handmade in Cumbria. These sauces are really hot stuff. You can order them by emailing info@mrvickys.co.uk or by telephoning 01768 210 102. Thanks to Neil and the guys at Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the show, hit the subscribe button tonight. It is free. Hit the thumb up under the video to like the video and click share to share to your other social media. If you want to join the channel, hit join. There's 3 different tiers. Pick the one that suits you and help support the channel financially. If you want to pay a one-off membership fee of £25 and get these goodies, a scarf, a pen, a cup, and entry into the monthly draw, then go to NUFC Matters and look for membership pack. Failing that, get your smartphone and put it over the QR code and it will take you straight there. We're also a podcast and you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and other podcast providers. Usually goes up 24 hours after the show has finished. We also support the food bank on this channel. If you want to make a virtual donation today at the Matchday Bucket, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and you can make a deposit today. Don't forget to enter the Shearer raffle. There's 150 tickets, £1 per ticket, and you can win a limited edition signed Alan Shearer ball. Enter now at nufcmatters.com. If you have a look on our website, we've also got a vast range of mugs, t-shirts, cups, and whatever else takes your fancy. The Isak t-shirt is proven popular this month, $16.99 plus delivery from nufcmatters.com. Don't forget as well, we do a range of events over the course of the year. We have Peter Beardsley, an up-close and personal evening at the Tynemouth Surf Cafe. Limited tickets remain, 25th of April. Get them now from Surf Cafe, tynemouth.co.uk or from ticketweb.uk. There's also an evening with Peter Beardsley on May the 19th at the Tyneside Irish Centre, and you can get tickets from newcastlelegends.com, and tickets are £50. Don't forget our end of season do takes place 27th of May, 7 o'clock at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets for that one are a tenner. NUFCmatters.com is where you can get your tickets for that. In June, Thursday the 1st of June to be precise, Rob Lee will be at Louis Liquor Store in the Big Market in Newcastle, and tickets for that are available direct from the venue. And an evening with Rob Lee, Lee Clark and John Beresford takes place the next evening on Friday the 2nd of June at the Grand Hotel in Gosforth. This is a charity event and tables are of £10, £700, and you can book them by contacting Natalie at heelandtoe.org.uk or visiting their website. In July, Gavin Peacock is in Newcastle on July the 10th at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets for that are available from nufcmatters.com. And he also takes an evening with at the Surf Cafe in Tynemouth on the 11th of July. So get your tickets direct from the venue for that one as well. And if you're a boxing fan, the Night of Champions, Ricky Hatton, Frank Bruno, Nigel Benn and Joe Calzaghe takes place at the Fed. And that will be taking place on the 16th of June. More dates to be added. Tickets from all those events, www.goldstarpromotions.co.uk.
Okay, and Newcastle United loan transfer backed. Deal good for both parties, screams the headline in the Shields Gazette. Dimitar Berbatov has tipped Scott McTominay for a loan move to Newcastle United. This is written by your erstwhile colleague, Miles Starforth, Liam. We've spoken about McTominay on this show quite a few times now, and if there was one glaring thing that stood out from last week's defeat, it was how important Sean Longstaff is to that midfield. And maybe, I think, it got a lot of people coming around to the fact that potentially we are weak in that area, because when Longstaff was out, we're led to believe it was tonsillitis that he had to sit out for, hadn't done much training. There was a gaping hole. There was nobody there to do the dirty work that he does. So McTominay would appear to be a decent option. What's your take on that story that your papers run?
Miles Starford, on the best operators in the business. Give him a follow if you don't already. And we also found out the news that Sean Longstaff won't be playing and had an illness from another one of the operators, Newcastle World, Jordan Cronin, who broke that story prior to kickoff last Saturday. Scott McTominay, I can see why he divides opinion among Newcastle United fans, but for me, it is quite clear. And I'm divided on this. Don't get us wrong, this isn't black and white, but I am quite clear on certain things. From speaking to people who know, having not, obviously, I'm not a regular watcher of Manchester United, but the bits I do see, I don't really think we've seen the best of Scott McTominay at Manchester United. But from speaking to a lot of people who know around Manchester United on the Scotland scene as well, is Scott McTominay is one of the best finishers around. And I think that's what you would get were you to come here. I think you would thrive in one of those positions, on those advanced midfield positions. And I think you'd see quite a lot of goals. I think you would score goals here. Do I think he's a significant enough upgrade to go and want to spend, say, 30% of your transfer budget on? I'm not sure he is. So I would have grave reservations about that. I don't, no matter what Dimitar Berbatov might think, I think it's highly, I would go as far to say near on impossible that Manchester United would be minded to lend a player to Newcastle United on loan, given they've got form with Jesse Lingard, who was effectively begging to be out of that football club. And the last thing in the world they were wanting to do was allow him to go to, at the time, lowly Newcastle United. So I don't think, given the rivalry that's re-emerged 25 years on from original battles, I don't think Manchester United will be minded. Look, I could be wrong. I'm not an expert. I'm not somebody who's going to be involved in these dealings, but I do know that he is massively admired by everybody. At Newcastle United, at size, athleticism. I want to dispel a myth, which again, a lot of people on social media would see McTominay as being signed as the type of guy that then frees Bruno Guimaraes up. So McTominay would play the sitter, the 6, as it's seen in modern day football. And the 8 would be then occupied by, Bruno plus another. That's not the way that Scott McTominay operates. Scott McTominay is very much like Sean Longstaff. There is quite a lot of similarities, and would definitely play as one of the 8s. Is much more at home and much better performing in the forward third of the pitch than he is anywhere near your own back 4 or 5, whatever you may play. So I want to kind of dispel that myth for people out there who seem to think that that's what that kind of deal would do. It wouldn't. He would purely be signed as one of those 8s, again, as is said in modern day football. I think he's got potential to be an upgrade on Sean Longstaff, but I don't really like saying that, because I feel like that does a disservice to Sean Longstaff. I'm not going to sit here and say the reason why Newcastle lost last week and were outperformed in every department was because Sean Longstaff wasn't in the team, but his departure from that 11 does leave a gaping hole, because they lose a lot of energy and a lot of hard work. The pressing, the amount of yards he covers is incredible. And I would go as far to say he's not been far off my player of the season. I think he's been absolutely incredible, Sean Longstaff. And that'll rile a lot of people up, but just say as you see and watch every game as you say it. And I can criticise him for his missing of chances, maybe his lack of quality on the ball at times. But wow, what a performance he's put in this season. From being a lad who started the season, who I would argue wouldn't have started in this team and maybe wouldn't have got a lot of out. If Jonjo Shelvey hadn't got that injury at Benfica, I suspect Shelvey would have started the season in this team. But Sean Longstaff did. And this is what you want from footballers. If you hand somebody an opportunity, like what Sean Longstaff's been handed, he's literally grasped it with both hands and taken it on a notch. And any player coming in, no matter whether it's Scott McTominay at 40 to 50 million or any other name that's signed in that department, one thing that that you've noticed from this season is whoever comes into that midfield department, and it will be beefed up in the summer, they're going to have a right battle on their hands to make sure they can knock a Sean Longstaff out of Eddie Howe's thinking because of the type of player and character that he is. Hard-working, loves the club, is a good Premier League performer. I think people still had doubts even up to about probably a year ago. Is Sean Longstaff a regular Premier League starter? And I think he's absolutely dispelled those myths with his and look, that's again, I feel like I'm downplaying the fact that he's a good footballer. Isn't as good as Bruno, isn't as good as some others on the ball. But I think there's a good mix there. And I think that's going to be a difficult balance to strike this summer, and where the recruitment is going to be key. Is they've got Bruno, who I see myself, and I'm like, can we release him a little bit more in the final, get him into the final third more? But I actually think he's got a good understanding of the likes of Longstaff, who'll do the dropping in and allow Bruno to go, and it switches during games. You see it a lot on the other side. Joelinton, if Joelinton plays, there's actually really good understanding between these players who all work really hard, all press really high, have all got good speed and good mobility getting around the park, all have their own faults. Joe Willock, technically, I don't believe is amazing, but his athleticism and his speed with and without the ball is great, the way he closes gaps up and gets into great positions. Sean Longstaff gets in loads of great positions, which shows how key those 8 positions are in this team. That everybody else it culminates in allowing those 8 to get chances. And we need to upgrade on quality in those areas, really, and quality finishing, which is where McTominay could be a good mix. Joelinton plays that. Often lacks that touch of quality in the final third. Look, blows that theory out with the 2 finishes he puts in against West Ham. Absolutely unbelievable. And the one that he sets up to get Newcastle back in the game at Brentford. But traditionally, if you were to evaluate him over the last 12 months, for example, misses a lot of chances. Sean Longstaff misses a lot of chances. Joe Willock misses a lot of chances. We almost need to upgrade a little bit in that department. Can we get one to come in and do the job of not only not taking away any of the quality attributes, like I say, Joe Willock's speed and mobility, Joelinton's size, physicality, the way he gets about the park, his imposing nature, as well as his mobility in getting forward. Sean Longstaff with his tackling, his energy, his pressing ability to get up the park. You need to add that plus the finesse at the end. They need one to come in and do that. And I don't think that's an easy job. I don't think there are lots of players out there who do both, who can do a lot of that and still have the final quality. Then you're really going up into the very upper echelons of football players here when you have a bit of both, where they've got all of the attributes that our 3 who play those positions have got, plus the finesse at the end and able to consistently score goals. So, for example, let's take Yuri Tielemans, whose stocks dropped massively in this season, who has been linked with Newcastle United for about the last year, is admired. He's got that finesse. So you put him in the Newcastle United midfield, he would score goals for fun if he was presented with those chances in isolation that Longstaff gets or Willock gets. He would score hatfuls at Newcastle United because he's got that finesse. But isn't mobile enough and doesn't work hard. So you either get one or the other, and Newcastle have got a lot of one in the 3 that they've got, and maybe just a touch of, the lack of quality in the final third that they could do with improving on. I see a lot of links to one player that's been linked recently is Ruben Neves as the holder. Like, he would come in and he would do the 6 and allow Bruno to play one of the 8s. But his mobility is a massive problem. And I think what I really don't want to see from recruitment this summer, and what I think that's really made Newcastle United stand out in the Premier League, and a lot of people take notice, is that mobility, is that speed, athleticism, the way they press, the way they get about. I don't really want to see a change from that. I'd rather see us sign players who are going to fit into that rather than transform into a more possession-based side. I don't really see the need to do it when it's been a blitzkrieg on teams at times this season. And I want to see that continue. And that's why I see the most difficult challenge. There's big challenges. There's big challenges in adding a little bit more quality in the forward 3 as well. But I think the biggest one is that most of the chances, and I don't know this for a fact, but it's just off my own eyes, is most of the chances in our team fall to the 8s, and can we get some more goals from those areas on a consistent basis would be my hope for next season.
Yeah, it's a good point that you make. Longstaff for me has been outstanding. I mean, you just need to look at the heat map each game and the work that he does, but he'll never be appreciated. And I agree with what you said about Bruno as well. To be fair, I think people have got that wrong about Bruno. That bringing somebody in will give him an opportunity to advance up the pitch. But one thing's for sure, we'll base our team on a strong spine. You need a good goalkeeper, a good centre half, a couple of good midfielders, a couple of good forwards, which leads us to Isak and Wilson. I mean, how, still reluctant to play them together. We've seen them play together briefly. Have you got a preference? Would you prefer to see them given a go together in the last 8-9 games, or would you like to see them continue in the same vein, which is mix and match, and see who's best, horses for courses?
I kind of like what he's doing at the moment. I think it is a horses for courses, but I also would like to see where maybe against it could be a Leeds, who are very easy to score against, somebody like a Southampton at home. I'd like to see it trialled. I'd like to see a little bit one where they've shown they can switch to that 4-2-3-1 and Isak is a 10. I don't want to see Isak on the wing. I don't think that fits. It doesn't work. He's been tried there a couple of times briefly. One of them was at Aston Villa, went Howard, ultimately just trying to change. He was trying everything in his book to try and wrestle a little bit of control and get players on the park in the end. I want to see Isak as a 10 and Wilson as a 9. I think they can play that 4-2-3-1 with Bruno and Longstaff, or Bruno and Joe Linton sitting. I think they can do that, and I'd like to see it trialled. I'd like to see if that could be a goer for a 90 minutes to see if Newcastle can. And again, I'm not going to be one sitting here questioning Eddie Howe is a whole lot more tactically astute than I will ever be. I would read all the books in the world and I still wouldn't have that level that these top managers have. But I would like to see it. And I think it would obviously matter. It depends on the opposition. But I think they've shown, particularly in that second half against Brentford, that they can change things up and wrestle control in games by switching their formation around. I think the key is I don't see Isak as a wide player. I think that's the problem with the formation and the team at the moment, that both have to play the central role, so you can't play both together. If they continue with the current formation, it would take a change in formation to do that. I don't think it warrants a change in formation given the results that they've had and the performances that they've put together, the success they've had this season, so I would stick with it. But I would like to see a trial of it. I'd like to see a little bit of variation, see if we can maybe go out in one of these games and give someone a good hiding with both players on the pitch, because there's potential there and it's a good option for Eddie Howe to have. But it's a well-worn phrase around these parts when he's like a new signing, and it always has such negative connotations because of the Mike Ashley era and the fact that we never really made good enough signings, or recruitment was rubbish. And when a player came back, any old player, it could have been Paul Dummett coming back for an injury and he was like a new signing. No slight on Paul Dummett there, by the way. I'm just
no.
That's our players in the squad. But Alexander Isak genuinely has been like a new signing because of the circumstances of this season. He's come in and been an absolute revelation. What a player he is. And I think even though Wilson looks like a total fresh player when he's coming in now, looks that he was almost during the winter months after the World Cup, looked like he'd lost a yard of pace, or didn't quite look at it. His fitness levels obviously were just, there was something not right there. But he seems to be over that now and looks fresh as a daisy, like he did at the start of the season. But even him performing at those levels, I would like to see Isak given a run till the end of the season to see how much he can perform and what levels he can get to, because he's never really had that opportunity so far. It's great decisions that Eddie Howe's got to make, having two strikers like that. That doesn't mean in the summer I wouldn't go chasing another as well. I think they do still need, if they're going to be fighting on 4 fronts, which will be from the start of next season, you would imagine, because I'm going to stick my neck out on the line here. and say, looking at the league table and the points difference to 8th and the lack of games that we now have left, I don't see Newcastle finishing outside the top 7, even with a disastrous finish to the season. So I believe European football will dust those passports off, because I believe European football will be back at St James's Park next season. It's just what form of European football. I mean, we would take any. But I do feel like, given where we've stood for most of the season, the level of performances, and where we are now within, on the home straight of the Premier League, I think it would feel like a little bit of a disappointment if it was anything but Champions League football now. I think a lot of people out there, whether that's unfair or not, and doesn't take in the bigger picture, I do think a lot of people out there would feel slightly shortchanged if it was Europa from now on in, because it's all in Newcastle United's hands. They've got the teams, they've got Tottenham at home. You wouldn't want a better team to play at home. The team below you can widen a big gap still with a game in hand on a team like that. You've still got Brighton to play at home, and everyone's talking about Brighton, the form, the games in hand, they've got this, that and the other. Still got Brighton to play at home. Well, you would rather have that than not. You'd rather be playing them at home than not playing them, because it's your opportunity. It's in your hands to shut them down. Like they did, had Manchester United home. It's like a 6-pointer. We're so used to relegation 6-pointers, but you take 3 from another and add 3 to yours. So having those teams at home is a big benefit. I think the way I look at the end of the season is 8 games. If Newcastle come in 4 of those games, like I said earlier, I think Champions League football will return to St James's Park. I don't see any reason why not. I think, add a couple of draws and a couple more losses. So 2 losses, 2 draws and 4 wins. I think that would get you about 70 points. And I think that'll be enough for Champions League football.
Yeah, I agree.
I think, and again, that's adding 2 losses. The biggest, looking at the fixture list, where do I see those losses potentially coming? Look, it could come on Sunday. You never know. I do fancy we on Sunday. I do fancy we against Tottenham. I think Everton's a tough one. It's just got that feel of what last year was. Just they'll be bang up for it, and they're a horrible team to play against. Any Dyche team's awful to play against. The Thursday night thing, I'm sure it was a Thursday night last year. If not, it was definitely a midweek or a Monday or something. Just a horrible. I don't like going to Goodison Park. A horrible, tight, old-fashioned, horrible ground. Just vitriolic atmosphere with them fighting relegation again. I think I do actually fear for that game. I think that could be one of the defeats, but it won't matter too much if you beat Tottenham on Sunday. Beat Tottenham on Sunday, then win again the following week at home. You can take a loss at Everton, and I think they'll still be in the mix with 5 games to go, and it's all still in Newcastle United's hands. I'm not a hugely defining week, but a hugely defining weekend is the way I see it. I think if Newcastle United beat Tottenham, I think I think we can get ready for Champions League football.
Yeah, I would agree with you, mate. Before we look ahead to Spurs, Joao Felix, another article in the Shields Gazette, taken from Court Offside via reports from various Spanish publications, that Newcastle are keeping an eye on Joao Felix, a Chelsea forward. 100 million euros is the price that Newcastle United would allegedly have to pay if they were going to bring Joao Felix to the club. Martin Simpson reporting that. What's your thoughts on that one?
No, I don't see that one. I'll be brutally honest with you. I don't see that one coming about. I think he'll still be a Chelsea player next season.
They've got a lot of players to get rid of, and failure to qualify for the Champions League is going to result in a few problems for them in the summer. I dare say it'll be players having to leave Stamford Bridge, but of course we will watch that with interest. Okay, Newcastle United taking on Tottenham Hotspur, and it is a 2:30 kickoff. As we pre-recorded this programme, we can't give you the team news on this one, but we do know that it's a sellout. Which game at St James's Park these days isn't a sellout, and the game is of course televised live on television, and 2 o'clock kickoff. And a prediction, I guess, from you, mate. What do you expect Is he going to go with a few changes? I guess probably one of the easiest team selections Eddie Howe has had to make, because nobody deserved their place after last weekend's performance.
Clean slate time. No, I think it wouldn't be a surprise to see Miguel Almiron back in the mix. Jacob Murphy, I really like. I do feel like he's run his course. Now, I think it'll be a very tough one to not play Sean Longstaff. I think Sean Longstaff comes back into the side. I think that's probably the easiest decision he will make. And I would imagine that midfield will have the makeup of the usual three. Well, I say the usual three. What I think you'll go with is Longstaff, Bruno, and Willock, with Joe Linton out left, is what I would imagine. And I think a decision will be made on whether Almiron and Murphy get switched over. I think Murphy's got his real positives in terms of going on the outside, pace. I just feel like he's come in, had his big impact, and then he's run out of steam a little bit again. So it might be one way you bring in Almiron. But that's what I would imagine. I think he'll stick with Isak. If I was a betting man, and I'm not really, luckily, I would stick with. I would bring Matt Target in, but I think you'll probably stick with the back four, which has served him really well throughout the course of the season. So I think we'll have a team of. I mean, again, this could date very quickly, depending on what time we'll put this out on Sunday. But I think the team will probably be something like Pope, Trippier, Share, Botman, Burn. I don't think you'll change it up. And I think you'll go Longstaff, Bruno, Willock, Joe Linton, Almiron, Isak. I think that would be my team. I think you'll probably go with. Be interested to see whether Alan St. Maximin is fit enough to take a place on the bench. As of Monday last week, he was still in France. So I think we'll probably have already, again, apologies to everyone out there, we're dating this. I think we'll probably know more about that from Eddie Howe on Sunday. But without any injuries, without any issues, that'll be the team I think you probably go with at St. James's Park.
Okay, mate. Yeah, that's apologies. I put the muted mic syndrome when something happens in the kitchen. The washing machine is put on.
I'm the same. I have these morning meetings with like my staff and stuff. I mean, you elevated position of Shields Gazette editor. So I meet with the Newcastle World Shields Gazette team, and the amount of times I get the feedback where it's like, "You're on mute. Can you take it?" I'm like, you'd think I'd never done this before.
God, how many times did we do it during lockdown? It was a running joke, wasn't it? Poor Chris, God bless him as well, who no longer with us. He was the king of staying on mute. Never forgotten that, Chris. Prediction then, Liam? Give us your prediction.
I think it will be a tight one. I think it'll be close. I could see Tottenham edging it, but I think Newcastle United on this particular day will edge it. I think they'll score, Tottenham. So I think a safe bet for me would be 2-1. I think Newcastle will beat them 2-1.
Yeah, I'm going 2-1 as well. Newcastle United to win a narrow game. Harry Kane to score, of course. And
yes.
Newcastle to win. Liam, great to have you back. Next Wednesday, it's a date. What time will be revealed earlier next week. But for now, great to have you back on, mate. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the game, mate.
Cheers.